The very first thing you see in this movie is that establishing shot of Nevada,
Yep.
which clearly looks like old film. And you see them pop up again throughout the film. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't quite get my head around why they look so obviously old, but my only thinking is that they're consistent throughout the film and they tie in later because they just wanted to use the shots of that big explosion at the end, and therefore they used the other ones throughout the movie, and it just sort of saved them some money on doing that explosion.
I think so, or they were trying to keep that sort of generic stock-looking thing, because obviously at the start of the film it's quite clearly old, and then I know we go forward and it's modern day, but whether they were just trying to keep it all concurrent, all the same, I don't know why, but I like to think it's kind of like, here's some stock footage we got, we're just going to use this because why not? You know, it's ridiculous and it's over the top. I like it.
And they keep some old school methods as well. I mean, at the beginning, when you see them traveling in the car, that just looks like it's done with old school rear projection
And
of
it
the background.
looks like they haven't tried at all to make it look any different. You know, put the fan on and off you go. And it's great. It works so well because that's exactly how it should be.
It looks dated, but it's brilliantly, sort of deliberately dated. And this was at a time when CGI was just sort of kicking off, and we're 5 years away from the first all-digital movie, which is Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Ding, ding. And in that same scene, we see Basil on the car's video screen when he's having the video call in 1967. But it looks like it was just, Adam West's Batmobile, which was on TV at that same time, 1967, 68.
Oh my God.
It's just such a great recreation. And the whole aesthetic of this film is stunning. Like, you look at the colour palette and it's really cold for Dr. Evil and really warm for Austin Powers. And the colours look good. They nailed that Bond-like set and production.
Where the whole end scene blows up and it's all going to shit, basically, and everyone's running around. It reminds me exactly of You Only Live Twice, where they're in the top of the volcano, and the volcano's all blowing up, and people are going, ah, everywhere, and there's Wilhelm screams being put in here and put in there, and everyone's running around, and you've got those ninjas running around. It's very the similar kind of carnage that's happening in this.
This is a hell of a wardrobe movie.
The costumes are obviously brilliant. I mean, you've got crushed velvet suit and that thing that he's wearing, the ruff around his neck, and all these crazy outfits. You've got the 60s fashion. You've got the twiggy black and white sort of dresses, the mini skirts, the hats, the haircuts. Everything about it's wonderful. Not only that, but Mike Myers, Austin Powers, his costume's been replicated at fancy dress parties ever since this film came out, Halloweens, things like that. The Doctor No suit that he's wearing at the end, the sort of inflatable thing with the helmet on that he's breathing through, it's absolutely bang on. They got it so right, and it's completely over the top, but it just feels right. It doesn't feel too over the top at any point.
Absolutely. And there's some of the behind the scenes where it was behind the scenes of the opening musical number where Austin Powers is going through London. And you just saw more of the extras in the background, like coming out of shops or whatever. And every single person in that scene, no matter how small they are in the frame or how minor they are, their hair is done in like a 60s fashion. And every tiny detail looks like it's absolutely correct. And I just thought to myself, how fun it would have been to have been on this movie, and even just as an extra, and you've sat in hair and makeup, you've been made to look like that era. That must have been such a giggle.
Yeah.
Let's move on to music, sound effects, and all that sort of stuff.
I had the OST for this film.
You?
I did. On CD. I had the OST on CD for this and number 2, and I listened to them loads, and I loved them. And so the music really resonates with me because I remember listening to it over and over again. I had a CD player. I used to listen to it loads. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, music is such a strong part of this. Like we said in the beginning, it's almost a musical. I mean, Soul Bossa Nova by Quincy Jones. It's become so iconic. I don't know how big it was before this, but it feels like it's so closely associated with Austin Powers now.
I think anyone from our generation will listen to it and instantly go, Austin Powers, and do the yeah baby thing. I don't know when it was released in 1962, if it was a huge track. Quincy Jones said that it took him 20 minutes to compose the piece, which is ridiculous because, it is such a great, you can't be in a bad mood listening to it. It just makes you want to get up and do the dance. It does, baby.
I mean, I feel a bit sorry for George S. Clinton, who did the music for this movie, because I think he gets overshadowed a lot of the time, and I don't think it's a name you necessarily remember. He did all the Austin Powers films, so they were obviously quite happy with what he did, and I think he did a good job.
Yeah.
And by contrast, he did the first 2 Mortal Kombat movies.
Ah, yes, which I think I've seen maybe once a long, long time ago and have not remembered anything about them. Although a family friend does portray one of the characters in one of them.
Oh, yes. We can't talk too badly about it at this point because we might get them on. What do you think about Bergerac?
I just love the fact he pops up. And the thing is, because I've got him on the OST, I listen to him and a lot more of his music as I grew up and I was aware of him. I love the fact that he's just there, and I love the fact that he just says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Burt Bacharach," and he's playing this piano as they're touring around Las Vegas, and it's so cool. It's just great.
There is no fourth wall in this movie, really, is there?
No. It just doesn't exist.
Shattered all the way through.
Yes.
Ming T, the band, I assumed the band was put together for this, but I feel like it existed before. I mean, Susanna Hoffs, the Bangles, right? She's a big name. Her name in Ming T is Gillian Shagwell.
Shagwell by name.
What do you think of some of the Ming T musical compositions?
I absolutely love the Ming T musical compilation. I think they were put together for Saturday Night Live. I think they were doing skits on Saturday Night Live. I think that's when they got put together. And I love the BBC song specifically because it's so British. Mrs. Will ya cook me tea? Turn on the telly, make love to me, and then turn on the telly to the BBC, BBC One, BBC Two, and it's just because it's like, here's a load of English things said in a very English, certainly northern and very, very Liverpudlian. I guess Liverpudlian, maybe that's wrong to say that, but certainly northern, slightly more working class, whether I can say that as a South posh person, but, that's just how it is. And obviously his parents were from, Liverpool and maybe spoke a little bit like that. It sounds just like that, and I love it because of that. I love it because of that so much. It's brilliant.
I'm not sure on how funny and amusing I find the BBC song, because it's one of those things where, it's just obvious that the language doesn't necessarily stand out when you know it. Right? Mm-hmm. And I wonder how American audiences perceive that. But also, they will have no grasp, at least back in 1997, that there was no BBC 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. No. It was BBC 1 and 2.
That's it. So when you went to BBC 3, that's a bit weird. Actually, that's ITV, mate. Yeah. Obviously now. Yeah.
That's the funniest joke of the lot, is that he reels off numbers that don't have BBC channels.
Yes. Yeah. Or indeed BBC Heaven.
Now, I was going to mention the Bond thing here, because to me, the music in the third act in Dr. Evil's lair as he's fighting off the henchman and gets his head beaten off by the mutated sea bass. That is like pure early Bond to me.
Da 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 da. It is. The rising brass that comes, that sort of, that's everything in Bond is the brass bits. And I watched Casino Royale a couple of days ago. It was Casino Royale. There's a plane, there's a bomb, and he's driving towards it, and there's the brass, and it's rising. The brass is rising. It's like, I have literally just seen this half an hour ago in Austin Powers. You could almost take that music and put it here, and it would still be the same thing.
I've got a couple of notes left on this, but one thing I want to talk about is a note I made called The Tragedy of Female Masturbation. I Touch Myself by the Divinyls. That's going to be a horrible cut if I'd paused there, wasn't it? This song, which is epic, and I used to put this on as the build-up music to when my band went on stage. This came out in 1990. Really? Right, and this song was number 1 in Australia, number 4 in America, number 10 in the UK. But the band broke up in 1996, a year before this movie.
Man.
Oh, what timing.
That is such a shame. It was written by Tom Kelly and Billy Steinberg with obviously the band. And they wrote Like a Virgin and True Colours. Very similar songs. And here's what blew my mind completely. Michael Bay directed the music video. Michael Bay, right? Of Transformers and every massive, huge action blockbuster of the last, 15 years. Michael Bay directed the music video, because obviously back then, cutting his teeth and what have you in the music video scene. Michael Bay. The Michael Bay.
Is it ridiculous and over the top?
Not really, no. I mean, she hints at touching herself, and there's lots of, all of that. But no, it's not really ridiculous and over the top and worlds blowing up and robots fighting each other at all. It's a music video. Yeah.
God. And that song, like the movie, like you can't put that on and not enjoy it. It is just a feel-good number.
It is.
One of my highlights musically of this movie is just the pairing of the fembot action scene with Boots Are Made for Walking. That should not work in a million years, but it's brilliant.
It's great, isn't it? Ding, 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 ding. It's wonderful.
Right, let's move on to some of the things we each want to talk about.
Tell me some stuff. Tell me some stuff. Go on.
It's the runtime. This is a 90-minute movie, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the comedy in a minute because some of the comedy is slow. But this movie, this is what movies should be. Movies should be 90 minutes long.
Dude, right? Absolutely.
And this movie flies along. It doesn't fly along. It puts the brakes on it quite a lot of times. But it's a fun movie from start to finish.
Films are an hour and a half, rock and roll. All these really long, epic films. All right, Titanic. Occasionally one will come along that needs to be long. But now you don't get a film under 2 hours. So this is wonderful. Get in, get out.
While we're talking about pacing, let's talk about some of the comedy and the jokes in this. Because...
Go on then. Because I might disagree with you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it sounds like you're already starting off on a negative foot, and I quite like the gags. And I think the pacing's great.
So there are some jokes, like the Swedish penis enlarger gag at the beginning. Great little gag, right? There's some good comedy there. But it goes on one joke too long when it does the whole, but that's the book and it is my bag, baby.
And I think that's great.
Oh, if they'd got out one joke before, that would have been epic. And then you've got the Will Ferrell death scene. Like... That just goes on one sort of scream and shout too long. Then you've got the shush scene. That always went on too long, even in 1996.
I'll give you the shh. I've got a big bag of shh. Oh no, that's the second film. But obviously, because they recycled loads of gags into the second film as well. There's a lot of repeats. And it's funny, rewatching this, I thought that some of the gags that were in number 2 were actually in number 1. I was waiting for them to come and they never came. It's like, oh, that must be in the second one then. I love the Swedish penis and made enlarger and me. And this kind of thing is my bag. I think it's perfect. I think you're dragging it out and it's starting to get uncomfortable. And I think that's the whole point of it, is that it's uncomfortable. And the death scene is like, oh, you shot me. But I'm actually all right. I think it works. I think that's the comedy of it. Is it's dragging it out.
I love the concept of it, and I largely love the execution. I could apply the same thing to almost all these scenes, which is I just think there's like a few seconds too much. I will give you, though, the turning the car around, turning the little cart around in the very narrow hallway. That is perfect.
I think because they cut from it as well and then come back to it, and he's still there.
Yes,
which is great. You know, it is a great gag there. I like that.
Now there are some cheap gags in this, like when he goes for a wee, and that goes on for ages. But I mean, that is ripped from Naked Gun 10 years before.
Yes, yeah, completely. And it works. And maybe it's reintroducing it, or some of these concepts to new audiences as well. It's just silly. It's just great.
They steal a lot of your favourite movies as well, don't they? The Bond movies.
Yeah.
But I do like the whole, why are you not killing him? You know, that kind of thing is really clever. But they steal wholesale the whole, do you expect them to pay? Stroke talk. No, I expect them to die.
Exactly.
I don't know how clever it is to steal just a line like that.
Because it's obviously ripping it from Bond. I mean, I wonder if they had any lawsuits or cease and desist letters or...
They did over the titles of the second or third one, I think.
Okay.
They came down pretty hard. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
There is a joke in this that was taken out by the makers of the film themselves. And that's a joke about Charles, who was then Prince, getting divorced after an affair with Camilla, because Princess Diana died on August the 31st, 1997, and this film came out in May the 2nd in America, but it didn't come out until September in the UK. Do you remember those days when we'd have to wait months for movies?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So they removed it from the UK theatrical version, and then they put it back in for what we then called the home releases on DVD and VHS.
Yeah.
And Diana's death was thought to be why it didn't do that well in the UK. Is it like people were too miserable listening to like Candle in the Wind or something?
What's a miserable take on that song? And someone's going to shoot me for that, I'm sure, in the comments. I mean, the country did go into mourning heavily. I mean, it was a huge thing. I mean, it was just pure shock. No one was really doing anything, so I wouldn't be surprised if it massively hit sales, especially for comic films.
And when we talk about things being cut from movies, there are some variations in this. And I know we had a very brief conversation because we had a text back and forth about some stuff in this movie, and some of it wasn't in there for you.
It wasn't. And I was really pissed off. And I said, I thought it was in this one, but it must be in number 2. And Gareth was like, no, it was in this one. I'm like, okay. And so looking it up, there's 2 quite significant releases. And you wouldn't realise it, but it's only 4 minutes or 5 minutes worth of cuts. But they're significant cuts if you've watched that film the first time around. And you've got the US cuts, basically, versus the international/European UK release. And they are huge.
And you watched the US one and I watched the international one.
You did. And actually, I mean, all right, all the gags are still there. It's all quite funny. But these bits are, as far as I'm concerned, all the extra really funny bits. Like, for example, sherbet, or here, would you like a piece of gum? And these are things that we used to say to each other all the time. Or the dinner party where, I don't know, the guys got killed by evil mutated sea bass, and he has the phone call, and Gary or whatever his name can't make it because he's had his head chewed off by evil mutated sea bass. And it's just those really silly little bits and pieces and they're gone and they're not there.
I mean, Christian Slater and Rob Lowe both hit the cutting room floor in the American version.
Which is odd because they're both huge American actors. I mean, I don't know how big they were at the time. I mean, Rob Lowe was surely a big actor at the time.
He was certainly well known, I can tell you that much, but for very different reasons.
Properly pissed me off that I watched the American version, I must admit.
Sherbet is weird pop culture moment. I don't quite know why.
I'm going to go across the road and get you some orange sherbet. I love it, and I was sad that it wasn't in the American version.
One thing I wanted to quickly talk about is just some of the other characters, and I'm going to start with a lot of vagina. I mean, that is mental. That is mental. But at the same time, it's no worse than Pussy Galore.
It's not, and this is the thing. It's not at all. It's completely fine. Although in
the airline version of this movie, they changed a lot of vagina to a lot of cleavage.
That's hardly any better, is it, really? A lot of vagina.
I mean, that is almost, there is a bit of trivia about this, that in one of the deleted endings, you get a thing about each of the characters, and they say in this that a lot of vagina was so fed up with people mocking her for her name that she changed it, and she changed it to Sandy Vagina. That's basically what the airline have done. The airline have missed the point of why it's ridiculous. Hey-ho. So that's great. Carrie Fisher's in this movie.
I didn't know that. I didn't. Where?
I don't think she was cut from the American version. In the therapy scene where Seth Green, Scott and Dr. Evil go to therapy.
Is that Carrie Fisher?
Cut as well?
Is that Carrie Fisher? No. She goes there and she's talking to him. You're right. There's Carrie Fisher. You see, I'm not a huge Star Wars nerd, so I wouldn't have known.
My princess. And the last character I was going to talk about is Random Task. I mean, for fuck's sake.
Who throws his shoe? Random Task, the actor who played Random Task, he's in the slammer for 36 years for killing his cellmate. Yep. He was put in prison for sexual assault or battery. And then while he was in prison, he killed his cellmate. Not at all. He killed a cellmate and is now serving 34 or 36 years to life. In prison.
Oh, so you're saying he's there now?
He's there now, in prison now. Yes.
Wonderfully know who he is.
Bad man.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Apparently, bad teeth is an American opinion stereotype of British people, especially British people in the 60s, which I didn't realise. And I guess that's a joke that we didn't get, or I certainly didn't get.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the health service, so, go fuck yourselves. But... I mean,
we probably have worse teeth now because the NHS has completely got destroyed in terms of dentistry.
Falling to pieces, but yeah.
I just thought it was like a flaw, or that it was just an added part of the joke that he's attractive to all the women, even though he has bad teeth. But there we are. Thanks, America. Really appreciate that one.
Yeah.
There's quite a point been made online. There's a real kind of talking point about Austin Powers' morals, because he obviously talks about how he was sort of shagging the thing and all this kind of stuff, but he doesn't shag a drunk Vanessa, and he says he didn't shag her mum because she was married. And that's quite a big... I think Austin Powers has been used as a character that helps define consent, which seems ridiculous.
because he's constantly at shagadelic and let's shag now, shag later, let's shag, shagorific, right? Yeah, but
only if you get consent.
Totally, and I think it's great.
Which is not something to be mocked, but it's an interesting character point.
It's true, I hadn't picked up on it.
I hadn't noticed it before.
No,
until I watched it this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I actually thought to myself, she's clearly drunk, and now he's suddenly like changed his mind, but he hadn't changed his mind. He just had a moral compass.
Yeah, because she's all like, "Oh, sleep with me." I was like, "Oh, let's go," and he's like, "No, we can't do it, baby. You're smashed." Or whatever he says.
I mean, this was ahead of its time in a way.
Yeah,
and it almost reinforces that Austin doesn't really have any flaws apart from his teeth. There's no real character flaws there.
No, he's not a terrible spy because he gets the job done. The only thing is he's not very good at telling whether a woman's dressed up as a man or not. He gets that wrong 50% of the time. You know.
Yeah, there are some jokes in this that haven't aged well.
Yeah,
and this almost didn't get a sequel.
Can you imagine?
The first film made a decent profit, right? I think it was made for 16, made 68. But the studio weren't convinced, and they like refused to greenlight a sequel.
Which is ridiculous.
But home video sales and like rentals made them change their mind, and they agreed a budget of double for the sequel, so it went from 16 to 33. That film, The Spy Who Shagged Me, it made more money in its opening weekend than the first movie made during its entire run. They got over $300 million, and Goldmember did the same.
Wow. I had no idea. That's mental.
Big money.
Wow.